From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast.
Hey, it's Charlie Matos, and in this episode, we're joined by funny man Gary Mule Deer. This was recorded June the 22nd of 2021. Gary was getting set to play the Tuesday Night Opry and joined us in studio to share some wonderful memories on his 60-year career. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast with Gary Mule Deer.
Home, boy. Yeah. That's Leroy on 650 AM WSM, WSMonline.com, Circle Television, and Gary Mule Deer. Just so you know, Leroy, if you're up this morning, the Leroy Parnell Mutual Admiration Society is on.
Just texted him.
Did you really?
Just let him know, yeah.
Good morning, Mule Deer.
Good morning. Never knew it was this light this early in the morning. I haven't been up like this. It's incredible. Man.
It's pretty strong, Charlie, when one of the first things you see as it relates to Gary Mule Deer is this is the funniest man in America, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
How long have you known Clint?
Probably about 25, 30 years. I guess about 30 years.
And how did you meet?
Well, he got me into the AT&T a long time ago. We met up at we belonged to a mutual club up in the Redwoods, and that's probably been about 32, 33 years ago. Yeah. Pretty amazing. I was his partner at his golf tournament a few years ago, too. I think 23 under won his tournament, and Clint and I were 23 over. We had a great time. And,
but you're a great golfer, are you not?
No, I'm not a great golfer, but I'm pretty persistent, and I've been. It saved my life, man. When I came out of rehab 34 years ago, I needed a new addiction.
Was it drugs, alcohol, or both? It was
Peruvian marching powder and Keno. I liked the combination of the two, which was bad, which enabled me to stay up longer, lose more, and rationalize about it. I was Randy Hart was on the road with me. He knows about that.
Randy's in studio. The piano man, my artist from the Grand Ole Opry is in the house this
Randy
morning.
was on the road with me at the time. He knew about my Keno stuff. Yeah, I used to go to bed Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for about 25 years. And I'm lucky to be here.
Wow.
But took up golf, just started walking in the morning and walking in the afternoon and playing the Comedy Store on the weekends. And one day, a couple of guys came up to me and said, "Do you ever do celebrity golf tournaments?" I had no idea what they were talking about. And Smokey Robinson, in fact, said that. I said, "No," he said, "I'm going to take you to a tournament. We're going to do about 10 minutes the night before, 4 or 5 of us. Then we'll play in the golf tournament." And that started me into golf, and that's pretty much saved my life. I changed one 4-letter word to the other one. I traded Keno and Coke for golf.
So how did you wind up in rehab? What were the circumstances that finally you went?
Finally, I fell over and had a stroke and almost went into cardiac arrest. I mean, literally, I'd heard that Keith Richards stayed up 7 days once, and I heard Waylon did too. I thought I'd give it a shot. And at 3.5 days, I fell over. And
where were you?
I was in L.A., and luckily they put me in St. Joseph's Hospital behind the NBC studios. And when I came out of it, the guy said, if you don't check in upstairs to this rehab place, you're probably going to die. So I went up and stayed and moved in with the heroin guys because they had all the chocolate. God. Why are we laughing?
I don't know. But we're all laughing. That's the thing. Yeah. So,
yeah.
As I think about that, did you relapse? Because that's always the thing with addiction. Relapse.
I did, and Randy was part. Randy doesn't know this. He was part of this. He was in with Steve Warner, and they were playing, and they were over at Beverly Garland's hotel. I went over and met him at the coffee shop, and I was staying with a guy, Bill Kirkenbauer. I was house sitting for him. I'd been out of rehab for 10 days, and I went back and I was trying to write a song and do stuff, and I couldn't make anything rhyme. I thought, well, I'll just call this guy in the valley. There's a guy in the valley that used to roam with a pager before cell phones, and if you didn't have it too within 30 minutes, it was free. So I just called him and asked for a half a gram, and he brought it to me, and I laid out a couple of lines, and took one and fell over flat on my back in the house and reached up, dialed 911, crawled out to the curb, and they took me back to the same place. And luckily, the same doctor was there. He said, "Now, do you believe me?" I said, "Yeah, I believe you. If I ever do it again, I'll die." And I never did it again. But I did relapse, yes, 10 days. Never told anybody about this. Wow. So, boy, this is fun, isn't it?
So he was like Domino's Pizza. If it ended in 30 minutes, it's free.
Exactly. He wasn't there in 30 minutes. It was free. He was never late.
Gary Mule Deer, if you just joined us, becoming a regular, quite regular, I might add, in this rich comedy history we know at the Grand Ole Opry. You're a part of it,
Dream come true, man. It's just unbelievable to me. Yeah.
How recently was your first appearance? I mean, are you a relative newcomer to playing the Opry, or did you play it like a long time ago and in your bag?
A long time ago. This is my 77th appearance tonight.
Oh, wow.
But it goes back to when I was on the last a couple of years of Hee Haw, and also the Ralph Emery show, and I was doing Ralph Emery, which was, what years were those? Probably, I don't know. About 10 years. I was on TNN a lot.
Yeah.
And the Opry once in a while. And my gosh, everything's really changed when Sally came in and
Sally Williams.
Yeah, Sally came in and it was great, and also now with Dan and with Gina, it's the best.
What's interesting?
I'm blessed.
The Opry crowd loves you. I've been lucky enough to work probably 10 shows with you over the last couple of years. But it's interesting because some nights they love you even a little more. Oh. And this past Friday was one of those they loved you even a little more kind of nights. What a great crowd.
I have to say, one of the best shows, my best Opry I've ever had. And, they're all coming back now. And they rapidly descended into the category that I fondly refer to as star for entertainment. They did that immediately. It was wonderful.
And standing side stage with Charlie Matos Friday night was one Kathy Mattea, who just fell head over heels in love with you and was talking about how you just need a belly laugh sometimes. You just need
good for the
laugh.
soul.
That's what she told me.
And you met her for the first time?
For the first time. We had known about each other for years, and that was the first time we met was that night. It was incredible. Yeah. Good as it gets. And Tommy going on before, Tommy Emmanuel, the show just really rocked. It was fantastic.
I think the first time I saw you was Johnny Carson, which you started playing Carson's show.
I started doing, what's funny about that too, Bill, is I never did it with Johnny. They didn't like my guitar and my props. So if somebody canceled or if a certain guest host asked for me, I got to do it. But Fred DeCordova, the producer, and Peter LaSalle, one of the executive producers, didn't like me because I had props and I had a guitar. So every time somebody canceled, they knew they could call Mule Deer and he'd be there in 4 hours. And I just mainly did it to keep my TV queue up. I wanted people to see me. Yeah. That way I could work the lounges in Las Vegas and stay up and alternate with topless reviews and play Keno all night. I mean, that to me, I'd made it. You kidding? This is show business.
I'm Googling Vegas topless reviews right now. This sounds like a good road trip.
We may have something new coming to the Grand Ole Opry.
I think so.
Hey!
Yes.
You're on 650 AM WSM's Coffee, Country, and Cody Circle Television. More with Gary Mule Deer coming up. Well, there's nobody you mentioned that this guy does not know. His name is Gary Mule Deer, and while I mentioned Roy Clark, I want you to tell the Roy Clark story, but I mentioned the New York Yankees because Billy Joel, 31 years ago, was the first rock and roller to play Yankee Stadium.
Yes.
And you've been a Yankee fan your whole life?
72 years, man, and I got to know them all well.
And you were telling us about Joe DiMaggio, a dinner partner.
The Kraft Nabisco. I got a call for the practice round, my first Kraft Nabisco, and Terry Wilcox, the head of Kraft Nabisco, said, "Your practice round's at 10:30. You're going out with Joe DiMaggio, John Havlicek, and Joe DiMaggio, John Havlicek, and Johnny Unitas. Is that okay?" It's the worst tee shot I ever hit in my life. But I really got to know DiMaggio, and we had dinner the night before the Kraft Nabisco, probably 10 years in a row, and got to be really good friends. He signed. I have the only National League baseball he ever signed. I brought a National League ball by mistake to the banquet, and he put it under the table. He says, "Don't you ever show this to anybody." So I've got that. But I told you guys earlier, one of the things he said to me one night, he said, "You know why you and I really get along?" I said, "No." Why? He said, "The main thing is you've never asked about her."
Oh, wow.
He was, you know,
so the Maryland question always got asked.
If you ever did with Joe, I think that was it for you.
Yeah.
It was over. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. Wow. Man.
And much like Carson, another guy, a public guy who's very private, right?
Very private. And, you know, although I never got to be on the show with Johnny Carson because the producers didn't like what I do, Johnny used to work the main room at the Sahara on weekends, a couple of weekends a month, and I was always in the lounge working. And so he'd come down to that as a special area. You could watch the show from the lounge in a VIP area. I would go up and hang out at his dressing room, and after the show, we'd go out and sit in the Keno area and talk, and people respected him. They saw him, but they stayed away. Everybody kept their distance. He's the guy that I noticed when he would walk toward the elevator to go to his room. People would say, Johnny, Johnny, and he would just keep talking and walking, wouldn't stop, and just make that eye contact, and everybody was fine with that. Today, there'd be no way.
Wow.
You know, he wouldn't make it, you know.
So Roy Clark.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Roy Clark, Grand Ole
man.
Opry star, the late Roy Clark, and him filling in for Johnny.
Yes.
As a guest.
And he
host.
asked for me, and I did the show. And as we're going to commercial, I wasn't allowed to go sit down on the couch. But he walked over to me, put his arm around me, and as the commercial, and they're clapping, and he said to me, "I'm taking you with me to Reno next week." So I went to John Esquaga's Nugget with him next week, and got to follow Bertha and Tina the Elephants. You know about them? Who were part of the John Esquaga thing for years.
No.
You always followed the Elephants for probably 40 years or more. Bertha and Tina started the show, and then the opening act went out after that, and then the star. I did that for years. I worked there with a lot of different acts, from Roger Miller to the Gatlin brothers, whoever it was. I always followed Bertha and Tina. Wow. Yeah. Now I go on in the middle of the show. People I work for now, I go on in the middle, so I don't have to do that.
I can only imagine you and Roger Miller together.
I'll tell you. I can't tell you. I don't have enough time.
With your two senses of humor and your
mind,
the similarity in your minds and your sense of humor.
Yeah. Some of the things, a couple of Roger Millerisms. He said that his mother's cooking was so bad. Every year, all the natives from South America would make a special trip up here just to dip their arrows in her gravy. That's just one of them. I saw Roger one night walk into after a show. I swear I was there for this one. Walk in after a show up to a suite. Then there where all the VIPs were waiting for him. He walked in, opened a can of Coke, put it on his forehead. It dripped all the way down his clothes onto the floor. When the can was empty, he looked at it and said, "Geez, I thought I was taller than that." I mean, literally, man. He's the guy that said I'd give my right arm to be ambidextrous. Well, Randy, that's where I met Randy. Randy was his musical director in '77. That's when Randy and I met, and we've been friends ever since.
So is Larry Gatlin the closest of that mind that we have still around with us today?
You know, I was with comics for all the years. Yeah. So I was with Robin Williams and people like that. And Robin, of course, was a sponge. Robin absorbed everything. He had an answer for everything and a character, but nobody was like Roger. Roger was just, I remember one night, Randy and I talk about this, we were at the Silverbird and the audience wasn't that great. And Roger just stopped the band and said to the audience, "Why don't we all just stand up and join hands and try to contact the living?" No.
All right, so tell me about the documentary before we run out of time.
Man.
This is extraordinary what I have seen, the bits and pieces you've sent me.
It's called Show Business is My Life, but I can't prove it. And it's just about my 60-year career with everybody from, I guess, interviews with David Letterman, Jay Leno, Steve Martin, oh my gosh, Alice Cooper to Kevin Nealon to Conan O'Brien to whoever. I mean, I'm pretty much overwhelmed with the whole thing. Going back and doing we digitized all my old video shows. I had over 300 TV shows to work on, and all these interviews and lots of interviewing with me came to Spearfish, South Dakota, where I live, and where. You know, it's weird back in Spearfish, South Dakota. It's different. Things you'll never hear in the Black Hills of western South Dakota. Honey, quick, Streisand's on PBS. Or one more thing you'll never hear in Spearfish, South Dakota. You really should cleanse your palate with some of this crystallized ginger before you try the bouillabaisse.
All right, Johnny Mathis. How do you come into each other's lives?
Oh, man, do a golf tournament, working the Crosby. And the night before, it was Glenn Campbell, Johnny Mathis, myself, Vince Gill, and Catherine Crosby, Bob Hope. We're all out doing 10, 15 minutes. The next morning, we're in the driving range. Johnny turns to me and says, "The lady's been with me 21 years, is retired retiring. Would you like the job? I said, yes. He said, you'll go on in the middle. And he turned around and started hitting golf balls again. And so for 27 years, Johnny comes out, opens the show for 35 minutes. I come out and do 25. There's a 20-minute intermission, and he comes back and does a 45 to close the show. So Johnny Mathis has been opening and closing the show for me for 27 years.
That's Gary Mule Deer on his way to the Grand Ole Opry tonight. Reba, Carly Pierce, Maggie Rose, the other names that are on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for coming to see us.
I loved it, man.
All right.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our program director at WSM Radio is J. Patrick Tittle. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director is Amanda Cannon. And I'm Charlie Matos. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help new people find the show.